Hey everyone, Dave Pele, Josh Pele, Mario Heron. Welcome to another edition of the Bolt City podcast. As you can see in the square, we have a special guest. Very excited to have him. And of course, it's former Charger linebacker, lights out, Shawne Merriman joins the show today. And Shawne, I'm excited. It makes me smile knowing that you're on because, man, when you wore that Charger uniform and the things you did at such an early age, it was impressive. And the lights out became one of those things that was synonymous with Charger football. Talk about your transition as we just went through the draft, going from college to the NFL, and how you made an adjustment, made an impact at an early time in your career.
Well, it's crazy because you don't get a lot of free time right after the draft. Like you go through the combine, you got a little teeny bit of a break, and then the next thing you know, you're in rookie minicamp and the OTAs and everything else. So everything's going so fast, it's hard to take it in. And so before you know, you're in training camp, you're trying to learn the playbook, you're in the season. So you really have no time off, man. But that period of time is where I probably learned the most coming in. You walk into a locker room with LaDainian Tomlinson, Lorenzo Neal, Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates, Jamal Williams, list goes on and on. So that time period is where you're the biggest sponge around that time.
Shawne, big Charger fan. I got your jersey on right here. You actually signed the back of it. So my question to you was, you played with Phillip Rivers. He talked a lot of trash. Out of all the quarterbacks you went against, was he the one that talked the most trash?
Look, nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, talks more than Phillip. And the funny part is that we're all like just over the last couple of years of seeing these clips because I think there was a negative, thing about Phillip. There was a bad, like this guy talk trash and this. And so when the cameras now and the microphones, you see how animated he is, and that's in front of the camera. He's like that all the time, and people don't understand that. Phillip he's like that in the weight room, and while we're eating lunch or while we're eating breakfast, he's like that all the time. And so, he's probably the biggest competitor I played with because he hated to lose, and he talked and competed, challenged you. It was a nonstop thing, man. So just funny seeing all the clips now and everybody kind of just changing their perception of Phillip over the last couple of years. Because guys, I played against him at when he was at NC State, when I was at the University of Maryland. I hated him too. So I get why everybody thought that at that time.
Did it almost make it more frustrating that he didn't cuss? Like that makes you 10 times more of a trash talker because you can't pull like the classic F you or, F yourself, anything like that. You had to get creative.
It was one time that he almost cursed. And I thought I had him. We were kicking their ass in practice one day. And it was when North Turner had came in. So the philosophy of our team kind of switched. When Marty Schottenheimer was there, it was a defensive-led, kind of a day, right? So if the defense had a great day in practice, it was a great practice. The offense, it was terrible if the offense won. It was a reverse. So one day we were just kicking the hell out of the offense, and then Cromartie had an interception. I was, getting sacks and SP, and it was just Donnie Edwards had to pick him. It was a bad day, and I thought I was going, Phillip was going to curse that one time, and he just never did. And I said, if he didn't curse at that moment, I don't think we're ever going to get him to curse at this point if he don't curse now.
It's funny. Eric Weddle's a friend of mine, and I always ask, the question with Eric, we always ask him, would you rather have 2 interceptions in a game on Sunday or 1 in practice against Rivers? And he goes, that 1 in practice is worth it just for the locker room. But he said it's just the trash talking on both sides, offense and defense, and the level of play and the way you guys went at it, because those were 2 very good sides of the football back when you were there with the Chargers and Rivers was at the top of his game.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, man. Practice was probably more competitive than a lot of the games we played in, especially between that 2006, 2009 when we were really, really hot. There was nonstop trash talking on both sides. I mean, fights, and we just went at each other so hard. But I think what made us a great team, the players, we ran practice, right? We ran the situation, and with practice going too long, LT or somebody starts screaming tea time, or it'll come from Phil, and the practice was over. And so we kind of, in a sense, was just leading the team. And that's, at that time period, that is what made us so great as a unit.
Shawne, in 2006, the Chargers go 14-2. You finished third in Defensive Player of the Year. I thought you should have won it that year with 17 sacks. LT wins the MVP. Obviously, the Chargers don't make it to the Super Bowl. Two-part question. Is that the best team to never make it to the Super Bowl in your opinion? And how surprised were you that they got rid of Marty Schottenheimer?
I think personally, and I'm not just saying this because it was us. We probably should go somewhere in the top 10, top 20 team of all time that 2006 year. And it's unfortunate because we didn't win the ring. And we all know and understand now how important everyone looks at championships and rings and being looked at in that light, and we didn't. So even when I'm watching like the all-decade teams or whatever, nobody's talking about us. I'm like, what are you talking about? We were the best team of that decade. We just didn't win a championship. And so I don't have many regrets over my career or anything like that, but I regret us not getting a ring because that team, but that based on that team and how it was formed, we should have went down as one of the best teams of all time, and we will never get that stamp because we didn't win a ring.
Yeah, I'm a big debate. I think this was 2 months ago. I got in a debate about the 06 team should be top 10 with one of my friends. We were a little bit intoxicated, almost led to a fist fight. But just to let you know, Shawne, I had your back. So if I took a punch for you, just expecting the same back. You are known for like the lights out dance. It's a killer dance. I did it when I was little, played football. I remember I did it. And then funny enough, Michael Porter Jr., he grew up in my hometown, ran me over the next play, and I never did it again because I was like, I don't think I deserve this. But kind of how did that dance come to be, and like how did you get the nickname Lights Out? Because that's the best nickname you could get for a defensive player.
Yeah, so I got my nickname my sophomore year in high school. Knocked out 4 guys in one game, and so what I did was I convinced my mom after 2 weeks of just asking her every day to let me get this Lights Out tattoo that I have right here on my you guys see that on my forearm. And so it's a light switch with a guy with a hand turning the lights out. And so when I had a big play or sack or hit, or whatever it was, I pretended to do the lights out dance. I was flicking the switch on and off. But that wasn't planned. I was just actually doing this, and wasn't jumping up and down and kind of going crazy. And then the crowd got loud. This was in college. The crowd got loud, and I got hyped at the same time. So I started to jump up and down because the crowd got me hyped, and that's how the dance and everything stuck.
When you knocked out 4 guys in one game, like was the other team, did they want to quit? Like did everyone just want to stop playing? Like I would have shit myself and said, I'm not going out there.
So right after that game, I had parents that was protesting, like they were standing in. We used to walk through the basketball court, and we had a fence to get on the field, and so it was like a little doorway, and there was a parent that was blocking the doorway as I'm walking up, and she said that I shouldn't be on the field with her son, right? Like she was trying to stop me from playing, and she was like, I shouldn't be playing football. I should be doing something else, right? Because they all thought the coaches held me back 2 or 3 years. They thought I was way older, not knowing that I was youngest on the team. And so that was kind of everything originated. And mind you, guys, there was no social media. There was nothing back then. So it was almost where I was from in Prince George's County. It was almost like a folktale. Like, yo, who's this lights out dude? Like, who's this guy over here that's like hitting? And I was playing wide receiver and tight end too. I was scoring touchdowns, interceptions. I was averaging like 15, 16 tackles a game. And so, like, who's this dude? And so it became a folktale. And not until I got to the University of Maryland and then I got to the Chargers, where it was on a national platform, that everybody kind of found out.
Shawne, you obviously the Chargers, when you were with them, were in San Diego. Now they're in Los Angeles. And it almost seemed like, I covered it here. I'm in San Diego right now and cover the team all the way up in LA. It seemed like your career would have been better off if you were in LA from the beginning. Almost like you were too big of a star for this media market compared to what they would have done for you in Los Angeles. Your career started like crazy. I mean, Junior Seau, everybody in San Diego loves him, great football player, Hall of Famer, but your numbers dwarfed his, the way you started your career. As far as being an NFL player, being so young, what was the greatest thing? What was your fondest memory as your career just started to blossom?
Well, it was for one, God works in mysterious ways, man. And me to get drafted by San Diego, I think you have a point, but I love playing in San Diego. I love San Diego. Now I turned 21, and in the city of San Diego, I learned how to be a young adult, right? And so I was a big enough name, and I'd done enough on the field that when I went to LA, I was still getting all the LA love, and I was doing more and more TV. I was on the Entourage and Mad TV back then, and I was doing a commercials. I had the biggest Nike football commercial of all time, and so I was big enough, and I thought that because even I wasn't really too concentrated on the media that was in San Diego. It was more the people, man. I just loved the hell out of San Diego, and so I started. I got the early on when I started getting comparisons to Junior Seau. I was happy as hell, and I was nervous as hell at the same time because I knew how big Junior Seau was, and I'll never forget. It was an article Kevin Acey from Union Tribune wrote in the paper there about me being the next Junior Seau, and the numbers, as you just said, was comparable, and I beat some of his numbers early on, and I was like, man, this is a hell of a comparison. I'm like, this is dope. This is cool. But at the same time, I was like, you talking about Junior Seau, who is San Diego. I mean, there was nobody that ever walked through San Diego that was bigger than Junior Seau. And so that was kind of when I started to say, okay, yeah, this is a big deal. So it was like a fond memory of mine, especially early on.
Shawne, obviously you're from Maryland. You end up going to Maryland for college. I'm a big Alabama fan, as you can see. Did anybody throw bags at you? You don't have to say any names, but were people trying to get you out of the state of Maryland to go to their college?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I had like 30 different offers from D1. And so, Miami, even when I verbally committed as a junior, Miami was still reaching out. I'll look up and I have, Florida State football coaches at my basketball games. It was crazy. Even after I made the verbal commitment, they were trying to make me decommit. But it was staying in Maryland and going to Maryland was one of the best decisions I ever made because, for one, it's a big media market. Washington D.C., Baltimore, and all big media market. But two, I was in my own backyard, and so like everybody who watched me grow up and play football in Prince George's County, Maryland, as a kid, high school, and now they got a chance to come and see me at the University of Maryland. It almost, in a sense, it's like, man, I'm playing for my people, right? Everybody here has kind of watched me over the past, several years go through this growing up and transition phase, and now they get a chance to come into my games, and so I always felt like I was playing for my own people there. But you're right, man. Alabama, Miami, Florida State, they were still after me after I verbally committed to the University of Maryland.
What was your second choice? If you didn't go to Maryland, was there any team that was definite second, or that's where you would have gone?
Miami.
Damn.
Miami, because so it was one reason. I mean, obviously, I probably fit very well down in Miami in the first place, right? Just with the guys they had. I think Frank Gore and Antrell Roll and DJ Williams and just all these guys around that time period. I would have fit in that, in that group of guys that they had. But they were really the only one that I would say, okay, if I'm not going to Maryland, I'm going to Miami for sure. It's just that thing that Miami had down there. I think that I would have fit right in for the kind of players and team that they were building.
Hey, Shawne, just curious, as an NFL player, and you've played in some great NFL cities, what is the best stadium or your favorite stadium to play in when you aren't playing a home game?
The Raiders. It was always the Raiders. I mean, because you go. I used to watch it on TV, right? And growing up, like when Bo Jackson was playing, and I used to watch like those fans, and I'm like, man, these people are crazy as hell, right? And you don't know how crazy it is until you get there. And I remember my rookie year and us pulling up, and they're throwing stuff at the bus. They're blocking the parking lot, and we can't turn certain areas. Like we got security and everything around us, and you get in all these costumes and this craziness, and you feel the tension in there for about 3 quarters. And then the fourth quarter, they quiet as a mouse in there because we're up. But I just because of my personality, who I am, I love walking into that intense environment. and those pressures and just the animosity between the two fan bases, between the two teams, divisional game, and so all those things, man. I lived for that type of stuff.
Shawne, obviously you're very involved in the fight game. You see Le'Veon Bell wants to fight Vontaze Burfict. Frank Gore fights people nowadays. Do you think in your heyday, if everybody was to fight, you'd be the last man standing? You're the most badass guy in the NFL?
Yeah, no doubt. There's no question about it. Yeah, I mean, seriously, and, I was training and sparring with some of the best MMA fighters in the world at that time. And obviously, because I was still playing, there was certain things I couldn't do, like not guys that gonna get me in a Kimura arm bar and snap my arm, right? But for the most part, I'm training with some of the best people in the world, and even after I retired, I still continue to spar and train. So there's no doubt in my mind that if another player or somebody wanted to lace him up, I don't even think anybody want that type of smoke with me, especially around that time period. Now, I'm on the backside of things now with Lights Out Extreme Fighting, and more on the putting a suit and kind of all the things that come with a promotion and live show on the back end. But it was a time, man, where I was like, anybody want to lace them up, we can go. And I would make it very evident that was the case.
What made you want to get into MMA after football? Like, what was kind of thing that drew you to it and made you go to, one, even doing the training, and then two, to do Lights Out Extreme Fighting right now? Well,
one of the first things was my friend Jay Glazer over at Fox Sports. And so I grew up boxing in PG County in D.C. I grew up around a lot of professional boxers. They would all be in my neighborhood. My uncles were professional boxers, so I was around a lot of boxers. Just grew up boxing in the first place. And I got drafted by the Chargers in 2005. That's when the UFC and MMA really caught fire around that mid 2000s, where it was getting some traction. And Jay, we were in the gym, and I was just hitting mitts and boxing a little bit. And he said, "Hey, I know you box, and you've done that, but have you ever tried MMA? I think it'll help your hand-eye coordination and using your hands and be more active with your hands in football." I said, "Yeah, shit, no problem. Sign me up." Right? He texted me an address. I show up the next day. Randy Couture is in the gym. And I'm looking at Jay, like, I'm not fighting Randy Couture. This is just not going to happen. But what I did was I learned, leverage and movements, and we were pummeling and grappling and just rolling. And it changed my body. For one, my body changed from 05 to 06 because I was just in better condition. I got really, really active and aggressive and violent with my hands and pass rushing. And I just continued on to do it. And so I ended up, I got into TV when I retired. I went to NFL Network, Fox Sports, ESPN for a little bit, and back to Fox Sports. And I said, hold on, I've been around this sport for 17 years. This was my philosophy and everything. I know how production works. I wrote shows before. I've wrote commercials. I understand how production and live TV works. And I launched Lights Out Extreme Fighting in 2019. We're at Fubo TV, Fubo Sports now. We just had a fight 2 weeks ago, just broke into the Fubo Sports, top 5 most watched all time. It was our highest rated show ever. And the Kentucky Derby was going on, UFC and the Canelo fight. And we were up against a lot. It was our highest viewed show. We got a fight coming up July 22nd in San Diego. It'll be my first fight. I've been working on for 2 years. 2 years I was trying to get this done, to have a fight in San Diego, man, because that's my home. That's my backyard. My god kids are still down there. Friends are still down there. I still work with, even though he passed away not too long ago, but Father Joe's, there in the Alpha Project, all these people I still work with. So San Diego will always be a home for me because that's what I came into.
No, that's fantastic. Shawne, so just to make sure we have it right, it's Lights Out Extreme Fighting, correct?
Yeah, Lights Out Extreme Fighting. You can find more information about us at lightsoutxf.com. And so, yeah, we honestly, and I'm not just saying this, I'm promoting the league. We have the best up and coming young fighters, right? We're producing guys that are and women that are going to be superstars here in the next couple of years. And me being in the position that I am and fortunate enough to be around some of the best athletes in the world, I know a superstar when I see one. I just do. And we got a few of them that's up and coming. So it's that part of it has been fun for me.
Shawne, last thing for me before we let you go. Chargers, I know you're paying attention to what the Chargers are doing. We set the standard kind of high as far as what we think they should do with the talented roster. how far should the Chargers fans expect this team to go in 2023?
The Chargers fans, and I want to make sure I'm saying this right. This season, they should be more excited than any other season, especially with Justin Herbert at quarterback. When they brought over Kellen Moore, right, from Dallas, I think that was the biggest and best offseason coaching hire across the league, overall, because he's walking into a situation where he has a well-oiled machine, right? You got one of the best quarterbacks, biggest arm, in my opinion, in the NFL. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Everett. You just drafted the young wide receiver out of TCU. Got Austin Eckler back there. You keep both of the ends, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, healthy. Your internal is good. You just brought in, another line back internal. Your secondary is good. J.C. Jackson is back. If you're not excited about this upcoming season for the Chargers, if you're a Chargers fan, you don't have a pulse. You really don't, because they could be the most explosive team in not only in football, but one of the most explosive teams ever. And it's going to be exciting to see. And I've looked at the schedule coming out. They're playing my former Bills. I think sometime in December I'm gonna be at all the games, but some of them I kind of mark off. Like, man, I can't wait to see that happen.
I'm ready to run through a wall, Sean. Like, let's go.
Yeah, Mario's ready to run through the wall and knock out 4 kids. He's ready to go.
There you go.
I'm gonna call you lights off.
Yeah. Oh, big off. Yeah. Dark as hell.
Hey, Sean, we can't thank you enough. It's always a blast to talk to you, a legend. And, of course, as Charger fans, I know our audience appreciates it as well. But we wish you the best of luck in everything you do. And thank you so much for your time.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Sean.
You got it. That, of course, is Lights Out, Shawne Merriman right there. That was a lot of fun to catch up with Sean and see how he's doing. When he told that story, no joke, Mario and Josh, when he told that story about knocking out 4 kids, I got scared and we're far away. One of those
yeah,
man, this guy is dangerous. I don't blame that mom for saying, what the heck's this kid doing on the field? Once in a while you play with, and we all played youth sports. Once in a while you see somebody that not only talent-wise is a little bit better than everybody else, but that one kid, man, I think it might be a little bit dangerous out here. And and I've seen one guy that maybe knocks out somebody, but just have one guy knock out 4 people is insane, man.
Well, Sean's 6'4", fast. You always think on the NFL field, somebody's going to die. Somebody's going to die one day.
Yeah.
When I was at Alabama, I'd watch the kickoffs, and I thought, dude, this is freaking Game of Thrones, gladiator stuff right here. Yeah. Somebody's going to die on this football field. These guys are too big, too fast, and they're putting everything into these hits. Sean also seems like one of those guys that is very involved in a lot of things. You see how he knew about the Chargers. He obviously knows a lot about fighting. He seems like he just has more time in his day than other people. And he's about to turn 39 years old a week from today, and he looks really good. I might get into some MMA myself.
Imagine being the 3rd string, I'm guessing wideout, being like, gosh, dude, I'm all set. Could you imagine the line of players that were taken out where you get to you and you're like, I wasn't planning on playing today. I just had a milkshake before the game, maybe McDonald's. If you're one of my friends around the Indy area, you probably had a little bit of the devil's lettuce and you're chilling on the sideline and you're sitting there going, now I'm going to have to go up against a future NFL linebacker. This isn't fun. So that was crazy. Everyone, please check out his Lights Out Extreme Fighting. That sounds like a blast. San Diego, it's coming towards you guys. So that's in the Palet's backyard. So make sure if you guys are there to check that out. But thanks again for Sean for coming out. That was awesome. And good to see him. I'm so scared of him. My voice cracked. I'm getting scared thinking about having to face that kind of football field.
He was outstanding when he started his career, where it was really an amazing quick start. If you look back at the draft when Sean was drafted, it wasn't really impressive in the first round. Actually, if I recall, and I'm sure one of you guys are pulling it up, it was the 2005 draft. There were so many disappointments in that draft. I think if I'm right, only 2 guys in the first round really stood out. It was Shawne Merriman and I think Ware from the Cowboys. And otherwise, everyone else kind of busted a little bit. I remember Pac-Man Jones was in that draft from the Titans. And all of a sudden, he's in trouble with the law. And you're seeing all these guys that really didn't do well. And as good as Shawne Merriman was at Maryland, let's be honest, in Southern California, we aren't getting a lot of Maryland games. When the Chargers drafted him, it was one of those drafts where I think people looked at each other and weren't really excited until they saw him and said, wow, you know what? The team knew what they were doing when they got this guy. But he was just incredible. So fast, so strong, and was smart. He wasn't lost. Like you see guys like, remember Larry English, and you're like, geez, man, he's never going to figure it out. This is going to be a complete disappointment. But Shawne Merriman was so good. And I have a Junior Seau jersey right behind my head. And Junior's a legend because not only was he a great Charger, but the guy went to San Diego high school. I mean, everybody knew him in San Diego. Junior Seau was the basketball and football player of the year, Mario, in high school. I mean, he was just a tremendous athlete, and everybody rooted for Junior, and the fact that he was a Charger was something else. And I think people fought it for a little bit that didn't want to believe Shawne Merriman, number one, was in the same category as Junior, let alone could be better than Junior. And it didn't take long. When you realize this guy's helping your favorite team win games and getting to the quarterback, it was pretty amazing to watch number 56 on the field.
I think the 2016 that went 14-2 had a crazy amount of all pros and Pro Bowlers. I think there's about 12 guys that made the Pro Bowl that year. The best team I've ever seen the Chargers have ever. They had the Sean Phillips on the other side. He made the Pro Bowl, and they got Shawne Merriman rushing the passer. And like you said, 2005 draft, I'm looking at it right now, undoubtedly the worst draft in NFL history. I've never seen a draft this bad. You got two Hall of Famers in the first round with DeMarcus. Yeah, it's horrible. It's the worst draft of all time. Aaron Rodgers and DeMarcus Ware and Sean's great as well, but not much more than that. A horrible freaking draft. But that 2016, man, I remember it like yesterday when Marlon McCree fumbled. I cried really hard. And then they got rid of Marty Schottenheimer, and I felt like, things were crumbling down on me. I didn't think Marty Schottenheimer deserved to be fired. I don't know, Mario, how involved you were with the Chargers back then. You're just a kid, but I didn't think he deserved to be fired. Then they brought in Norv Turner, and I thought he was completely overmatched for his job. I don't think the Chargers have hired a great head coach since Marty Schottenheimer.
It's like one of the greatest mysteries probably in NFL history. Like, how did this happen? And how did a team go from 14-2? Yeah. Well, but it's just interesting. It's an interesting thing to look back on. And I guess you can give a little bit of praise to how good Belichick was and the Patriots were for stopping that team. And I guess you can kind of give them a little bit of bones, but at the same time, it's like, how did this insanely talented team with an MVP, with everything you need to be successful, how did they not make it? It's sad. It sucks. Charger fans, when you think about it, just think it could be worse. You could have Tom Brady and Randy Moss and lose to a Giants team that wasn't very good. It could be worse, I guess, but it does hurt, especially because I think looking back now, could they have beaten that Colts team? I think absolutely. And then any team was going to win in that Super Bowl against the Bears. I mean, Rex Grossman, my nephew can throw it as good as him. So it was whoever was coming out of the AFC was going to win it. And it's the most Chargers thing in Chargers history to have your best team not even make it to the AFC Championship.
So here's a couple things real quick about Marty for the younger people who follow. All right. Marty, again, 14-2. You don't see NFL coaches get fired at 14-2. Usually that's not the way it's supposed to go. Marty Schottenheimer and the general manager, A.J. Smith, they did not get along at all. And it became a pushing match. And it was almost where those two guys pushed the owner to make a decision on which one are you going to fire. And this has happened with the Chargers before. It happened, of course, with Bobby Beathard, and it happened before after they went to the Super Bowl about you going to keep the coach or keep the GM, and they decided to keep the GM over Bobby Ross. So Marty and AJ don't get along, and Marty's obviously been in the NFL as a lifer. I mean, forever he was an NFL guy and thought, what, I deserve some more say so. The Chargers told Marty Schottenheimer, you can hire anybody you want on defense. You just can't hire your brother, Kurt. He goes, I'm hiring my brother. And they said, no, you can hire anybody but your brother. And then you try to hire his brother. And now he just pushed their hand where they had to push him out. And he was gone. And, unfortunately, Marty is no longer with us, of course. But the interesting thing about the players, because at that time I talked to the players on a daily basis. It just Charger football ran San Diego sports. As much as people want to believe now that this is a Padre town, this is always a Charger town in San Diego. The younger guys, and I say younger guys, I'm talking guys around Sean's age or a little bit older, the Nick Hardwicks, those guys, even though they're in their 20s, they're considered veterans. And they said, man, when I came into the league, I needed a coach like Marty But as I got older, I got tired of getting yelled at and tired of being talked to like I was still a rookie. And every one of those guys, they can say whatever they want now, but every single guy on that roster had told me Marty has to go. They were all sick of Marty. And then when Marty was gone, guess what? When they matured into men, or like I'm talking over the age of 30, every one of them changed their tune. They didn't appreciate what they had in Marty until Marty was gone. And then Marty was pushing them to get the best out of them. And then all of a sudden, Marty's no longer there. The team starts to fall apart. They digress. They went from being the dominating team, of course, of the decade. And you can make an argument that even though they didn't win a Super Bowl, they were the best team for about 4 years. And then it was over. And then we saw it get worse and worse and worse. And you see them still trying to fight back all the way to 2023. Can they get to even that level that they were of the Marlon McCree game?
So let me ask you guys a question because I just looked it up. The Chargers had 3 losses that year, obviously. If you were to combine all the points that they lost by in those 3 games, do you know the total?
Dude, I have no idea. What is it?
7.
9.
Ooh,
they lost
wow.
by single digits, and they didn't make the AFC Championship game. Insane. It's almost that's crazier actually than when the Chargers were first in offense and first in defense in the entire NFL and didn't make the playoffs. That's also crazy. Yeah. That was a few years later. Only the Chargers can do that. So Mario, we had some great news. Davante Adams is pissed off. He thinks the general manager for the Raiders doesn't know what he's doing. He feels like he was lied to. He doesn't like the situation that he's in. Do you think Davante Adams is going to be traded? Do you think the Raiders are in a bad situation?
I think the Raiders are caught in a position of they don't know what direction they're going in, right? They have too much talent to tank, but not enough talent to win a Super Bowl. But the attitude of we want to compete and we want to win now. When you're caught in all of that, you're in purgatory. That's what you are. I call it Indiana Pacer land. That's where you're at, and you're going to be stuck there. And that's where, that's just what it is. Davante Adams took a risk. He went back and played with one of his best friends because situation felt right. A very successful offensive coordinator, a very talented receiving core. You get to kind of prove yourself of how good of a receiver you are, that you don't need Aaron Rodgers, the 2-time MVP, to show how good you are. And he took a risk and it's just not working out. And now I think he's in a spot of he obviously wants to win. He obviously wants to win a Super Bowl, but it's just where can he do that? Do I think the Raiders trade him? Maybe. In today's day and age, I have no idea what happened. A guy signed a max contract and then asked for a trade a month later. So I don't really know, but it wouldn't surprise me if he tells the Raiders, look, the situation is we're in a very tough division with possibly 3 playoff teams. We're not winning. Jimmy G can't throw me a deep ball to save his life. Why am I here? Something I'm definitely keeping an eye on because I think it can happen. And there's a long list of teams that I think would pay a pretty high dollar for a receiver that's arguably the best in the league.
Raiders are in an interesting situation because they've stunk for 20 years. I mean, they've been bad for a long time. The mystique of the Raiders is there because I think more of even just the fan base. I mean, Sean spoke about it. The Raiders are the one team where they can continue to be terrible, and you still look to see what the Raiders are doing because of not only what they've done in their history, but also because of the black hole and the crazy fan base. It's okay to be a Raider fan and have your team stink because there's still a mystique that goes with it. Can't think of too many teams in the NFL that could fall in that category. Maybe the Dallas Cowboys, obviously, with everything they get media attention wise, but it's still not. I don't think it's always cool to be a Cowboy fan. It's always kind of the coolness that the Raiders have. You can't stop staring at them, whether you like the uniforms or just what they're about. Because everyone sometimes in their life wants to think, man, what would it be like if I was the bad guy? And the Raiders allow you to be the bad guy for a Sunday. Well, they're a bad team. Bad organization. Defensively, they've been a mess forever. They haven't been able to figure out what they do in the defensive backfield. Obviously, outside of Max Crosby, everyone on defense is pretty much a disappointment. It's been bad for a long time. If you're Davante Adams, you look at his last 3 years going into camp. He goes into camp with Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Famer. He goes into camp with Derek Carr, one of his best friends. He's excited. Well, now he's going into camp with the quarterback that he doesn't believe in. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. The GM doesn't know what he's doing. At that point, you're thinking Davante Adams, you just got rid of my best friend and Derek Carr. And the only way to fix it to make me happy would be to bring in Aaron Rodgers. Well, they didn't make an attempt to go after Aaron Rodgers. Instead, they chose the coach over the player. They bring in Jimmy G. Now, the Raiders could take a huge step backwards, which is crazy because there's not too many steps you could go further back than what the Raiders are doing. If Jimmy G falls apart or he gets hurt, the Raiders are even worse than they thought. And you know the Raiders are going to mess up their first-round draft pick because they do it every year. The Raiders are the king of messing up draft picks. It's not like they continue to get better and build back up. They just screw up the first pick. So if Jimmy G is terrible, Davante Adams is going to become disgruntled. And then you have to look into obviously trading him. Now in the NFL, it always surprises me that guys you think you'd get a first-round pick for, you wouldn't. I don't even think you get a first-round pick for Davante Adams because nobody seems to get a first-round pick for a lot of these guys unless you're starting top 10 quarterback in the league. Otherwise, you're looking at second, third, and then the Raiders have to ask themselves that decision. The Raiders, I think we all said, probably are not a playoff team going into 2023. Davante Adams is looking at the clock. He knows that time is running out, winning that Super Bowl. He wants to win. He already has the money, so the only thing left is winning and being put in that category. Is he going to Canton, Ohio as a Super Bowl winning wide receiver? Man, you understand why he's frustrated. I also believe this. I'm curious to know on this, and this is a question I'm going to ask you guys. Is Davante Adams, even though he's the best player on the team, is he in a position to talk the way he's talking before camp even starts? Or is it one of those where, hey, Davante, we paid you a lot of money. We needed to be a leader for all these young guys that we needed them to raise their game. And guess what? Now, before people even put the practice gear on, there are people with their heads down going, the best player on the team doesn't believe in this team. Did he make a mistake?
He made a mistake because you're right. Davante Adams, great player. Davante Adams has never won anything. And I mean anything. Jimmy G at least has proven to be a winner. If I'm Jimmy G, I said, Davante, you're a great player. I'm the one that's won. You're the one that hasn't done anything. So I don't understand why he's talking right now. Obviously, he's upset because Derek Carr's not there. Jimmy G's not the type of quarterback that's going to have a receiver with 1,500 receiving yards, which Davante wants. But I would give it time. Obviously, Darren Waller's not there anymore either. He's probably upset about that. But things haven't happened yet. So just give it some time and let things play out. And Davante's job isn't to be the GM. His job is to catch passes. So if I was him, I wouldn't talk anymore.
I kind of disagree. If I was him, I'd be furious. I'd be furious on all levels. I would be very angry with the organization. I don't have a problem with him saying this in the sole reason of, I'm guessing when he was traded to Las Vegas, it was, you're coming here with your best friend. We're going to, lollipops and rainbows, drive off in the sunset like we're in the ending of the movie Grease. I think it was just all of that. They promised him a lot of things. He performed. He had a great year. He was all pro. He performed. He gave everything the Raiders could. The Raiders didn't give that back to him. Then they come in. They say goodbye to his friend Derek Carr. Instead of going out and getting a real QB, you get Jimmy G. If I'm him, I'm furious. I'm like, dude, I'm 30. I'm going to hit the backside of 30. I want a Super Bowl QB. This is not a Super Bowl QB. This is not a QB. This is nothing what I asked up for. If Tom Brady coming in changes that and from an exec role, which I don't know, when you see former players coming for exec roles, just because you're great at a sport doesn't mean you're a great exec. If that was the reason, the Charlotte Hornets would have 6 titles by now. But no, they barely make the playoffs. So to me, I don't have a problem with this at all. If I'm Davante Adams, I'd be just pissed. You're a top player in the league. You're probably promised things that didn't work out. And you're probably a little bit mad that you left Green Bay, even though that's a crap hole of a place to live.
I have no problem with him being upset. I just have a problem making it public because you aren't just affecting, yourself. Now you're going after your quarterback. Now you're going after the fan base. Now you're going after the front office. Now you're going after, what Las Vegas is trying to do and showing that this is a big time NFL city. There's so many things that the Raiders are trying to accomplish as an organization that will be around a lot longer after Davante Adams decides to retire. It's a bad look. I just don't understand why you're going to go in and burn the house down before you even start a practice. To me, that's not the angle I would want from, and let's be honest, an employee.
Yeah. Dude, the situation is when you're in high school, okay? And you don't really want to date this girl, but this girl says, I will date you and I'll let your friend date my friend. And our friend is ugly as hell. Our friend can't get any girls. But this girl the friend that we're talking to will date him, so we'll go for it. We're going to go for this girl even though we don't want her. Derek Carr sucks, Davante, if you think you were good enough to save his career, you're an idiot. He's the ugly girl. You're great, Davante, but you're not good enough to save Derek Carr from making bad decisions. You make bad decisions. You went to the Raiders. The writing was on the wall. Derek Carr was on the way out. And if you think Will Levis was going to be a better option than Jimmy G, you're out of your mind. I think the Raiders did try to get a quarterback. I think they tried to get Aaron Rodgers. I think they tried to get Tom Brady. It just didn't pan out. Jimmy G was the best next available quarterback. Sorry, Davante. Okay, you're not good enough to save Derek Carr's career. Nobody is. Sorry, rant.
No, it's a very good point.
Right.
But look, let's just say grace. Thank the Lord that the Raiders have drama. Like thank the Lord they're struggling right now. You hate to see your enemy struggle, but at the same time, feels pretty damn good. And if they're talking to smack, lights out's gonna be at your door.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing as far as guys who take new jobs or guys who get hired or change teams. Sean Payton had a line, and it was kind of a funny line about how he's the new coach of the Broncos, and he says, "You understand that family over there owns Walmart. So I mean, if things don't work out here, I'm sure I can become a greeter at one of their stores down the street. I'll be okay." Was his joke line. Obviously makes enough money. He's never going to be a greeter. So here's what I always find is funny. So if you're Russell Wilson, any of these guys, and you have the big press conference and everyone's there because it's your first day, in your mind, does it ever go through your head that one day I'm going to be sitting here going to get fired? I mean, how many people actually retire as that head coach? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't, you're hired to be fired is the saying. Do you think at any time, let's say you got a big time job, let's say Mario, you're named head coach of the Chicago Bulls. Are you thinking about the day you're getting fired at all? Are you thinking, man, I'm going to be the greatest coach of all time?
See, that's a good question because when I first got this job, my first thing went through my head of how many ways I could get fired. So that in my head, I would be 100% like, I would think after a 3-game losing streak, that's when I'd be like, is my job okay? Like, do I need to like tweak out a little bit? Do I need to go to the GM, go ahead, maybe let's trade someone, let's get something going. Do I need to pull LeBron and go into an interview and cry about my teammates and that there's just not enough support around me? I don't know, maybe. But yeah, it is a fair point. I think there's no job really that secure in the NFL or just any sports as a head coach that fan bases can turn on you quick. The bigger city, the bigger the turn. But yeah, I would definitely think that in my head 100% as soon as I sit in that chair. 100%.
So PFF put out a top 10 players under the age of 25. Justin Herbert's 25 years old. Before anybody gets upset, Justin Herbert's too old to be on the list. I'm going to read you guys the top 10 PFF did, top 10 players under the age of 25. Tell me if you agree, disagree. I'll let it go right here. Number 1, Micah Parsons. Number 2, Justin Jefferson. Number 3, Tristan Wirfs. Number 4, Jamar Chase. Number 5, Sauce Gardner. 6, Creed Humphrey. 7, Patrick Surtain. 8, Rashawn Slater. 9, CeeDee Lamb. 10, Andrew Thomas. What do you guys think?
That's a good list. I mean, it's a good list. It's funny. Every time you mention a guy's name, I'm like, all right, he'd be on my list. He'd be on my list. I tell you, the guy who is so fun to watch right now, and you never know with defensive backs how long they're going to be great. We've seen guys that get banged up, and it's easy to see, shoulder problems or knee problems, whatever else. I was so impressed with Sauce Gardner last year. I can't tell you. I was just, and I know we don't catch a lot of Jets games, but I was so impressed with him. And this, you're going to laugh at me when I say this name too. We talk about Micah Parsons all the time on the show. Tristan Wirfs is a hell of a football player. And I know people don't pay attention to the offensive line. He is a hell of a football player. And whenever you get a guy that's freakish that you watch him, I mean, we see Rashawn Slater and we know how good he is. But for a guy that most people don't see from 3,000 miles away, I'm impressed with that list. I have no argument.
I was digging deep to find an argument for changing Waddle and CeeDee Lamb. And then as soon as I was digging deep on it, I just got absolutely doused on by the other way. So that was a good research. Found out you're wrong. It's going to sit back and just say, yeah, the list is pretty good. I actually agree with all of it. Obviously, the offensive linemen, offensive linemen's always funny to me when they put it on like a list like this because the average fan will just go, all right, it's really hard to argue that because there's no like really dominant statistics that show this is a great offensive lineman except giving up sacks, but kind of run game and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to tell. But in looking at all these guys and looking at what they've been able to do so far, yeah, I mean, the only argument I would literally make is that I'd put Justin Jefferson over Parsons at number 1 just because of seeing what Jefferson did against the Bills this past year when he single-handedly like won that game for him was something that blew me away. So that would be the only thing is maybe Justin Jefferson over Parsons, because I think Justin Jefferson's God. The guy's unbelievable.
So you guys think you can make a top 10 list and not have one quarterback on there? How's that possible?
Under 25, yeah.
Quarterbacks are the ones that you wouldn't have Jalen Hurts, runner of MVP, on this list. You wouldn't have Trevor Lawrence on this list.
How old is
not Trevor
Jalen?
Lawrence?
How old's Jalen?
Okay.
Oh, Jalen's 24.
Jalen's 24.
Oh shoot. Well, Jalen would be on my list. I'd put Jalen over CeeDee Lamb. I put him over
almost
Humphrey.
Humphrey.
You just mentioned that.
Yeah, I'd have Jalen on the list. Like Mario said, it's so hard for me to tell the offensive linemen. I'm not watching Creed Humphrey and Andrew Thomas. I couldn't tell you how great they are, to be honest with you. I know Tristan Wirfs is great because Tom Brady says he is, but the other guys, I would be lying to you if I told you I'm watching some offensive line tape.
Yeah, I mean, I love these lists. All right, next show we do, we're gonna pull out these lists. It's always fun to argue. This one's probably the least amount of arguing we did on our list, but I always love these lists and going into it. By the way, and don't want to skip over it, I loved what Shawne Merriman said about Kellen Moore. I mean, exactly what we have said on this show. Not saying it because he agreed with us, but kind of I'm saying it because he agreed with us. He saw what we saw. That Kellen Moore coming to the Chargers is a huge addition, and Charger fans straight out should be very excited about what's going to happen in 2023. There's a reason why they're in all these primetime games, just like we discussed it in the schedule last week, that you look at the Chargers and you say that the rest of the country knows and the league knows that the Chargers are one of the most exciting teams in the NFL, and that's why you're going to see so much of them. We're lucky that we get a chance to follow this team and not one of these teams that you're going to struggle and barely move in the mud. So it's going to be exciting. We'll come back with another show in just a few days. Again, we want to thank you for listening to the Bolt City Podcast. We're Josh Pele, Mario Heron. I'm Dave Pale. Again, you can watch the show on YouTube. So many of you people are. Again, comments. We'll get to your comments next show. I know we ran a little bit short, but if you write your comments, and we read them all, we actually love the comments that you write on YouTube. And again, the Odyssey app, you can listen to the Bolt City Podcast.